Okay, so again, attendance. I'll go over each one. Abeliana, not here. Abis, Abisalon, Joyce,
Present, sir.
Alob, Chenboy, Alob, you here? Alob's not here. Amontos,
Present, sir.
ang Champo,
Present, sir. Present.
Antipas. Antipas here? No. Arlan,
Present, sir.
Baklaan,
Present, sir.
Balintong,
Present, sir.
Konahap,
Present, sir.
Dazo,
I love the A, sir. Excuse me.
okay, Alob present. Dazo, Dazo not here. Detuya,
Present, sir. Present.
Diktikin,
Present, sir.
Ebeza,
Present, sir.
Ebarlas,
Present, sir.
Fajardo,
Present, sir.
Flores,
Present, sir.
Gallardo,
Present, sir.
Handomon,
Present, sir.
Lim, Ella, na here. Lunday,
Present, sir.
Makabudbud, not here. Mandras,
Present, sir.
Opsima,
Present, sir.
Ortiz,
Makabudbud, present, sir.
okay, Makabudbud present. Ortizano,
Present, sir.
okay, Panisan,
Present, sir.
Penonce, Penonce, Pelayo,
Present, sir.
Pono,
Present, sir.
Purgatorio,
Present, sir.
Rehis,
Present, sir.
Centillian not here. Tagsip,
Present, sir. Present.
Villasaran,
Present, sir.
Yangkin.
Present, sir.
Okay, so let me just go over quickly again the attendance. Those I have
Excuse me,
marked.
sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Santillan, sir. Present.
Okay, so I have Abeliana, Abis, Antipas, Dazo, and Lim absent. That's about
Dazo,
5.
sir. Present, sir.
Okay, who else? Abeliana, Abis, Antipas, Lim.
Gabi, sir. Can you message siya sa net? Sir. Ada.
Sorry, what was that?
Abi, sir. Present.
Okay. So finally, Abeliana, Antipas, and Lim not here. Correct?
Antipas, sir. Present. Antipas.
Okay, so 2 people absent, Abeliana and Lim. I think you can start. If they become available as we go along, please let me know. Okay, so first off, let me start with you getting your backgrounds, right? So I can see that based on your information, except for 3 people, you guys are all taking up accountancy as major or as course, right? So except again for 3 people. So expectedly, our approach is different for BSA students, right? Because you're sort of a cream of the crop, and that you are treated slightly differently from from those who are taking different course, right? And this subject is management science, and some of you may have already covered all the materials that I have uploaded so far. And it may appear to be intimidating because some of you are first year, second, and then the rest are second year. And I find the subject really complicated. It's very advanced. Can if I assess your level ba? I don't know why it was designed this way, but back in my days, we normally take a similar subject when we reach higher accounting. So that means we're on our third or on fourth year. Okay, but nevertheless, let's try to simplify, the concepts and how you would be able to apply this in um, in basically what I'm trying to say is how you're going to be able to apply this material into your upcoming board exam if you'll be able to finish this course and the relevance of this in the real world. It may not be that you will take the board exam. It may be that you will be taking um, jobs right after you graduate, and how you would be able to apply this. No, and some of you, I don't know if any one of you here is already working. How you would be able to use this in the workplace. Okay, so I want to assess what is your understanding so far, and I'll be calling few names. So please be ready. I want to know um, from Dazo, Miss Dazo, what is your understanding of management science? Miss Dazo, are you here? And it went silent. Dazo's not here. Anyone who wants to save Dazo, just send me a message or send the class a message on the chat box. Arlan, do you have any idea what management science is and what you're actually taking?
Management science, from my understanding, it's an study of statistical and operation research method.
Okay, in your own word, what does that mean? I know it is statistical, but what does it mean to you?
Answer ka ng development of the organization or strategy.
Okay, so development of strategy. I want to expand on that later on. I'm taking notes of that. What about Ang Chapo? Ang Chapo, you here? You're with us? Hello? Who wants to answer? Alug?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay ra din ako yung cam, sir. Di kay stable ang connection.
I understand. So just go ahead.
Based on understanding, sir, management science deals with decision making in the management, wherein the approach is on scientific basis or there is a direct computation on the kanang onto deciding certain decisions, sir, in the management.
Okay, decision making, scientific basis. What
Yes.
else? Miss Konahap? Anyone who wants to volunteer, just again put something in the chat box. Balintong, do you have anything to say?
Management science, sir, talks about ways or decisions on how to effectively or efficiently manage the workplace or most specifically in a company or in a business.
Mm,
Decision making.
okay. What else? Um, Miss Lunday. Do you have anything to say, Miss Lunday? Youngkin, do you have anything to say?
Management science, sir, is the primary objective of management science is to help the managers solve the problems related to decision making, and it involves mathematical models.
Okay. And one last one. What about Miss Makabudbud? Okay. Miss Panonce, do you have anything to say?
Management science involves a scientific approach that will help the organization to solve problems and to manage the organization into an efficient and effective manner.
Okay, so let's stop there. Uh, okay, so all your answers are valid, right? So the management face some problems, right? What could these problems be? Most of the problem has something to do with allocating resources, right? So resources are scarce, right? Could be raw materials if the organization is into production, could be human resource, right? Because any organization need people to work for the organization, be in whatever department that would be. Another problem could be on profit maximization, right? So if the company is already profitable, how can they further improve their profitability? Another problem could be um, wastage, right? So if there's a lot of wastage in the company, how can the management make operations and the use of materials more efficient and more effective? And another problem, of course, there are endless problems, right? There are several problems depending on what the organization is and the extent of their operation. But one last problem I could say is if the company is losing money, right? So if the company is losing money, how can it, how can the company turn around from that situation, right? And our role as accountants are to our role is to provide information, right? So we do not make the decision. It is the management that will make the decision. Our role is to provide that information to support their decisions, right? So if you are an accountant in an organization, you simply present the information and then that information is forwarded to the management. Who are these management? People on the C-level, right? It could be the chief financial officer, the chief executive officer, could be the chief operating officer, and all the other general managers, right? So we are simply providers of information. And how can we better provide those information, right? By making sure that our information is relevant to the issue at hand. It has to be timely so that when the decision making is done, all those who are bound to make decisions are already informed, right? And then it has to be accurate and complete, right? So you already studied that in your lower accounting subjects about the qualitative characteristics of financial information, and that applies to us. No, this case though, this is quite different from financial accounting, right? So when you say financial accounting, you're geared towards reporting financial information based on historical figure, right? You have a different audience when you talk about financial accounting. This subject, from the word itself, management science, is mainly for management accounting purposes, right? So when you do management accounting, the audience is simply just the management, not the external auditors, not the SEC, not the government. Simply used within the organization. Okay, so it does not necessarily make use of historical information alone, but it makes use of forecasted information, meaning information that haven't occurred yet, right? So when you talk about sales, how much is your sales historically, meaning in the past few months or past few years, and how much your sales would be in the coming years, right? So those information you collate together and you make a forecast, you make a suggestion, you make a recommendation, right? Again, because you do not make decisions. Now, different that's slightly different from a financial accounting, because financial accounting only reports historical numbers. You cannot report a forecasted number in a financial statements, correct? But you can do in management accounting. So if you pursue a management accounting role in the future, then this will be helpful for you. Okay? So again, you talk about problems, and then what you will do is to uncover those problems and then provide recommendations on how to solve those problems. Okay? That's what you're going to do. You do not make decisions unless, of course, you become the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, right? Then that's when you make decisions for the company, right? But if you are at the level of an accountant, you make recommendations, not decisions. Okay, so let's go over your answers. So for Alob, he said he or she. Let me just look at the first name so I don't address you incorrectly. Give me a moment, guys. Okay, so for Alob, Janbo, he said it's for decision making. That's correct. It's used for decision making, and the basis of which is scientific. When you say scientific, you actually make of scientific models, right? So example of that would be linear programming, break-even analysis. So you make use of mathematical formulas, right? You just don't say, okay, this one is profitable. What is your basis? Because of the formula that you actually use in coming up with a statement that such a product is profitable, right? And then development of strategy. Okay, so when you say development of strategy, it's for the management, no? So when you present the facts of the matter, the development of strategy is for the management to do. So if the company is losing, for example, what are its strategies to make the company to turn the company into a profitable one, right? If it's already profitable, what are its strategies to make itself more profitable, right? So decisions to effectively manage, right? So decisions to effectively manage, if say management need information as to how the organization is performing, right? So if it's not effectively being done, if managers are not effective, how are those bases came up with? So when you say, okay, this division or department of the company needs improvement, right? So what are the basis of that statement? No, so you came up with KPIs or key performance indicators. Okay, so let's say for example you're an accountant and you would say, okay, this department is not performing according to sales, right? So its budget is say 100 million, but it only delivers sales of 5 million. So it may not be justifiable to spend 100 million only to get 5 million sales, right? So meaning this management is not being managed properly, right? That's what you are going to say as an accountant, right? You do not say, okay, we will cut this department, abolish this department, take I would say, fire all the people in that department. You don't say that, right? Because you do not make decisions. You make recommendations, right? So you say this department has been losing a lot of money because it's not managed properly, right? You simply state the facts. Okay, and then your recommendation. Okay, recommendation could be retraining for the people, could be salary deductions, could be reshuffling of people, You do those recommendations based on the facts. Okay, but again, you do not make decisions. Then you help your organization solve problems. Yes. So if there are problems that are identified, right? So management have problems. What you do is you design mechanisms for that problems to be solved. Okay. And then lastly, you help managers solve problems using mathematical models. I think I've already emphasized that earlier. So you got that? Management have problems. You as an accountant provide solutions to that problems. How do you provide solution? By using mathematical and scientific approach, or mathematical models and scientific approach. You do not just say management, this one is ineffective because I said so. Because based on my observation, it doesn't work that way, right? You have to present numbers and you have to present it objectively, no? Because when you say, okay, I think this department or this product is unprofitable because every time I look at, I see the malls, these products are not being bought by the customers. That's very subjective, no? How do you say so? I mean, it could be at one point in your life you came to the mall and that, or the supermarket, and then it only happened once, right? So you don't have the numbers to support your claim. That's very subjective. That's based on your opinion, right? But if you say, okay, this product is unprofitable, it's not in demand in the market because based on my market analysis, brand A, B, and C and D, if I put them into graph, ours is the lowest, right? In terms of market share, ours has the lowest market share, right? So that means we are not being patronized by our customers, right? So what are we going to do about it? What's the problem? Is the product itself, or is it a problem with marketing, right? Or is it a problem with the pricing? Because sometimes it could be pricing. If we're priced way too high, right? It's not justifiable. So customers would tend to buy other products, right? Get what I mean so far? Understand? Sabat
Yes,
ka?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I tend to be really, really fast, guys. So bear with me. And we don't see each other often anyway, because I believe that the materials that I have provided you with are already enough, and it's according to the class guide or the course guide, the structure of it. But what I would want to do occasionally is I meet with you so that you understand and get things into context. No, when I say context, meaning how it really works in the real world. Because sometimes we just study theories, we just study all these terminologies, and we don't really know how it works in the real world. You cannot connect, no, because especially you are first year, second year. What do you know about business? What do you know about manufacturing, right? What do you know about an organization? Nothing, right? Because you're purely doing academics, right? Um, it would be um, it would be good if you're already working so that you can relate that to whatever you do in the organization. But if you're pure and a full-time student, it will be very difficult for you. I mean, when I was studying this, I study terminologies. I tend to memorize. I tend to, just follow with what the teacher has taught, because the teacher himself or herself has no experience working, no, and that's very difficult because how can the teacher expound on an issue or a topic or a subject at hand if he or she himself doesn't know how it really works in the real world, right? So there's going to be very limited contextualization, right? Whatever is in the book, what I say, explain, right? But I'm telling you that this subject is very close to my heart because my experience, although I am a CPA, my experience mainly for the past 11 years is spent on management accounting. So management accounting is very close to my heart because I've been doing it for like 4 or 5 years, okay, and in a manufacturing company. So break-even analysis, variance analysis, those are the things that I do. Forecasting, budgeting, 5-year plan. Those are the things that I do, and I've been exposed doing these things with higher management. right? So basically, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not the expert on the material, but I can assure you that I know what I'm talking about. And there may be some topics or materials that are included in the resources that I'm sharing you with in Moodle, but I don't really expect you to fully understand those and have a full grasp of it, because reality in life, or in our student life, is that we are bombarded with so much information, right? Too much information, and probably sometimes too overwhelming. And if it's not explained properly by an instructor, we just you know it's sort of just a compliance. You study that just for you to pass, but not really for the goal of understanding and hopefully applying that into the role that you will be taking on as an accountant in the future. um, and by the way, congratulations for taking this course. This is something that um, very useful. And according to my boss before, because he used to be a farmer and I think an engineer, and he switched to accounting. He was an Irish guy, and he would tell me that, I'm lucky to be an accountant, Chris, because um, if there's any major economic change or a downturn for that matter, mga recession, accountants will not lose their jobs, because any organization will need to have an accountant, right? But engineers, if the plant close, engineers get fired, right? If there are, what else? If you're into technology, if your technology become obsolete, then if you're a software engineer for that matter, you get fired, right? But accountants, no organization in the world does not um, maintain an accountant, right? So our job never goes out of fashion. That's what he kept telling me, and I can relate to that. No, everyone needs an accountant. Every organization, because we put matters into organization. We put a story behind the numbers, right? So of course there are numbers presented to the organization as data, but what we do as accountants is we organize those numbers and make them more meaningful, right? That's why our product are mostly, or not mostly, but actually are called financial statements, right? So at the end of the year, whatever we have recorded in our books of accounts, we produce financial statements. So financial statements basically are summary, no? Summary of what happened during the year, right? And the changes of our position from year to year, right? And we present that to the organization that, hey, this year you made profit. How much? This much, right? 5%, 10% growth. That's what you do. What's our financial position? Okay, this year we're okay, we're liquid, we have enough resources to pay off our debts. That's what you do, right? But in case when there are, say, downturns in the organization or in the company, and it's not doing well, then you can also present that. This year we're not doing okay, and it may be that in the next 2 years we can collapse if we don't do anything about it, because based on our liquidity or insolvency, we have too much debt to handle, right? And our strategies are simply not working. Meaning, instead of rising market share, our market share is declining, right? And if it's declining for the past 3 years, it's not changing. Instead of going up, it keeps going down. Then you can already see the future. No, if you don't do anything about it, it may lead to a business closure, right? Those are things that accountants see, right? Sorry, accountants see, meaning inyong makita, right? Because you study the numbers, right? So you study historical numbers to be able to project where the organization is going, no? And then you compare that versus what the expectation of the organization was, right? At the start of the year, normally organizations will do budgeting, right, or forecasting. So if the organization would say, okay, this year our target is to increase our market share by 2%, no, increase our sales by this much, increase by our profitability by this much. The end of the year, you will compile your information, right? And then you will see if we are on target, right? If we are on target, if we are behind target, or if we are above target, right? And what are we going to do about it? No? So if we are above target, do we keep the momentum? If we are below the target, are we going to do something about it to raise the performance to our target, right? Or are we going to diversify or say we stop doing this, we go another way, right? So those are the kinds of decisions that management do, okay, with your help or with our help as accountants, right? And most companies now, when they do this information or they do the recording, they do the reporting, they make use of technologies, right? So gone are the days wherein you do the manual bookkeeping. If you have undergone accounting one, you do the bookkeeping in a journal book, in a ledger, in a worksheet. Guys, in the real world, those no longer exist, right? You no longer have, unless you are bookkeeping for a sari-sari store maybe, or a very small business, but you don't dream of working in those organizations, right? You have to dream bigger, right? So when you actually go out there, you will use most likely SAP, right? If you're in a big organization, you may be using maybe QuickBooks if you're in a smaller organization, right? If you're in a lending company, for example, you may be using a customized system. But what I'm saying is that you will no longer be doing the actual manual entries the way you were doing it in your accounting one, right? And then you would not be doing the entire process by yourself, right? You will not be doing it. When you go out there, you may be assigned in one division, department, or area. For example, when you go out there and you work for a big company, you may be assigned to become an accounts receivable accountant. So what do? You simply record all receivables. Diba? You simply all record all receivables, tanan nga mga um, invoices or official receipts that you have issued to your customers or your clients. You take charge of those. You record that into financial system or the accounting system, right? And if there are payments, you update those as well, no? And then it may take many years before you can move to another area, probably to a fixed asset accountant. So if you do a fixed asset accountant, you will be handling all fixed assets, right? Doing the depreciation, doing the data tagging, right? And then you may be moving up to, say, reporting. So when you do reporting, that's when you start pulling up reports, right? So financial reports, be it internal or external, right? And then eventually you will rise to become a level of manager, for example. Then pinaka last in yung position will be as controller or the CFO, right? So you will go through a process. You will not be doing everything all at once, no? Unless, of course, na chances you will be working in a small organization nga imo tanan. But what's the advantage of that? You know the entire process, right? So gikan sa gikan sa recording up to financial reporting, imo, right? And then you have people under you to work on that. You delegate the task to them, or worst comes to worst, ikaw ra gyud ana tanan, gamay kayo nga organization. The advantage of that is you know everything, right? But in a bigger organization, no way that you will be doing everything. Compartmentalized na siya, right? Compartmentalized na, so that when you want to know everything in an organization, you have to stay in the organization for many years, right? So you start with AR accountant, then move to AP, for example, then move to reporting, then move to whatever else position is there, just so you can complete the entire process, right? You have a picture of everything. Mabitan na kung mo choose mo being an external auditor, for example, mo join mo SGV, PNG, or whatever big five auditing firms, you cannot just stay there for a year. A year, it will be too premature for you to be able to cover everything, no? Because you have in the books of in your balance sheet, for example, you have different accounts there, right? So you have assets, liabilities, and your equity. Mo asset pag yun, divide pag yun na current and long term, di ba? So it could be that you're just an account auditor for assign ka og audit of cash. So just cash, right? For many months. And then you move to physical assets, right? And then spend few months there. But if you quit on your first year, you will not be able to cover equity, you will not be cover liabilities, right? So you will not be able to have a full grasp of how the entire audit process works, right? So minimum, according to one interview of a senior partner in an auditing firm, minimum daw that an auditor must stay in an auditing firm is 3 years. No, so 3 years he can go to another organization or he can move up. So from being an associate auditor or junior auditor to a senior auditor, no, wherein you have people to be working with you. But if you are working for small auditing firms, kaning nara sa Cebu, for example, the advantage of that is you can cover most accounts in just a year, right? Because there will be very few of you working. But the disadvantage of that is that you will not be exposed to to standards, no? Because practically speaking, when you are in a small auditing firm, dili mo tagaan og trial balance, financial statement sa client. Kamo mismo ang mabuhat trial balance, 'di ba? That's how it really works in the real world, guys. 'Di ba? Ang purpose sa audit is tagaan mo financial statements and then you evaluate the assertion of the organization, no? But kung gagmay nga company, mahitabo is wala sila recording. So ang auditor mo ay mag-start og recording, mag-compile, mag-present sa financial statements. No, so I'm telling you this story because that will have an impact on how you will be proceeding with this course and what you'll be expecting, no, in the future. And like what I said earlier, this is going to be a course that will be approached differently because of the complexity of the work that you will be doing, and also because we have a board exam to pass, right? And if you are not prepared during your undergraduate, it will be very difficult for you to pass the exam because the exam is getting difficult over the years, right? Although the subject that we are covering, actually, this is a very difficult subject support exam. It's for MAS or Management Advisory Services. No, so it's another subject or one entirely different subject sa board exam. And mostly what it would cover is break-even analysis. So that's very important. I'm sure that you have already covered that because that's one of the first topic, and I think that was covered in our prelim exam. So when you talk about break-even analysis, you understand at which level of the operation of the business is it profitable, no? Or if it's not profitable, at least it's breaking even. When you say break even, there's no loss, there's no gain, right? So what does it mean by that? The break even point is basically your minimum target, right? Your minimum, because you cannot target wherein the organization is placed in a position where it's losing money, right? So that's why you make a break even analysis. No, one factor that you will have to consider in a break even analysis is the fixed cost, right? Have you covered fixed costs before? Do you understand what fixed costs are? Have you covered that? Anyone in the chat? Ramontos, do you want to volunteer if you have any idea about what fixed costs are?
Yes, sir. Fixed cost, sir, mo na siya ang kanang cost, certain cost sa company nga stable siya throughout the
Okay, when you say stable, what does that mean? You want to emphasize on that or expound?
I'm ganang constant sila, sir, ba regardless sa any other circumstance nga tabo or any other nga bisan pag mapuno pa ang bisan pag mapuno pa ang production ng company, ani nga fixed cost will remain constant.
Okay,
Like, for
example. You wanna give an example?
Yes, sir. Example ka ng sir, mga salary, sir, sa
Okay.
staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how are those fixed costs?
kuan sir, kanang constant na jud sila sir throughout the kuan sir ba? Throughout the accounting period or throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, dili sila mag-change. But,
Okay.
as opposed to the other cost na variable.
Okay, that's good. I think you have a really good point there. There's one answer from Miss Balintong. Do you want to expound on this? You said fixed costs are independent of the other factors in a business. So what do you mean by that?
It's somewhat like sa parehag sa giingon katong previous person, sir, kanang fixed costs are independent of some factors, like for example kanang maglisod na bitaw og pasweldo sa employees, still ang sweldo, like for example a month is 40k per month, still ang masweldo gyapon nila is 40k gyapon, since fixed cost man siya, independent siya sa bisag unsa nga problema ang maabot sa company.
Okay, so when you say independent of the other factors, what are these factors?
Problems
Problems?
that might occur in a company or in a business, like for example shortage or
Mm-hmm.
ano.
Okay. Okay, you have a good point there. I just have an issue when you say independent of the other factors, and factors would be problems. Well, those are not necessarily problems. Anyone else want to expand on what fixed costs are? Anyone else? Miss Purgatorio, I like your last name.
Good day, sir. For my understanding, sir, ang fixed cost, kaya just what like Amonta said, muna siya ang katong constant
Mm-hmm.
costs or expenses nga wala nagdepende sa level of goods or services sa isa ka kumpanya, but rather muna siya ang mga amounts or kanang constant amounts like kanang rent on PPE, taxes, and kanang depreciation, mga utilities, and plant maintenance.
Okay, very good, Miss Purgatorio.
Thank you,
So
sir.
fixed costs, you have all good points. Now those are costs that do not change, regardless of the level of operation, not regardless of whether there's a problem or not, right? So regardless of the level of operation. So if you increase your production, you still have the same rent, right? Regardless of whether you produce 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, you would still have the same fixed costs, especially if it has to do with your rent, diba? Ang rent mo is 40,000 a month. Bisan pag ning sales kay had 100 million, 200 million, it would still be the same rent of 40,000 per month, right? So those are the other factors that you were saying, Ms. Balintong, right? So other factors such as sales, production level, right? It would still be the same regardless, right? Gets ra? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So another example that Ms. Purgatorio said is depreciation. Yeah, so depreciation still the same regardless of the level of production unless you are using a different depreciation method, diba? Because if you're using an output-based depreciation, then that's gonna be a different story, right? But if you're using straight line, sum of years digit, it would be the same regardless of the level of operation. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Another example of that will be administrative salary, right? So administrative salary, except kung na yung mga overtime, would still be the same regardless of the level of operation. Pero when you say salary sa operations, of course, kung mag-factory ka, mag-increase ka production more than the usual because there's higher demand, you will ask for overtime sa imong staff, di ba? So that you can produce more. And if you do so, those are no longer fixed, di ba? Because it changes based on the level of production. So when you say salary, you have to identify whose salary, diba? In an organization, na ay mga staff nga pwede mo OT, then mo OT bayaran, diba? Pero kung managerial level na ka, you render OT but you are no longer paid OT pay, right? Because you are on a managerial level, depending on the organization's policy. But based from experience, most managers do not get overtime pays. Okay, gets so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, next follow-up question. Why do you think it's very important to manage fixed costs in a break-even, and why is it important in a break-even analysis? We talk about fixed cost, but what is its relevant? Why is it important to manage it? Any idea? Or shall I call one by one? Miss Lunday. No word from Miss Amontos? Just 1 second, guys. I'm writing comments on those who participated. So, Amontos, you have Balintong, 1 second. Panonce. Okay, and then we had earlier Miss Purgatorio. Okay, anything else? Opsima.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so why is it important to manage fixed costs? Go ahead.
Okay, sir. So for me, kanang it is important to manage a fixed cost. It is because, for example, so kanang sa imuhang mga trabahante, so you have na fix na jud na nga mo pay kanila og salary. So what if dili na nimo ma-maintain or dili nimo ma-fix ang kana siya nga imuhang gimbuluhaton? So there might be or there is a possibility nga ang katong imuhang mga trabahante is mamahawa sila or it's either nga dili mo work na sa inyong company or kuan ka nang there might be problem occur in your business or in the company.
Okay, so we're talking about if you're not able to manage your fixed costs, that will impact the motivation of your employees.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good point there. Anyone else want to add? Mr. Gallardo?
Good afternoon, sir. It is important to study the fixed cost, sir, for us to know or to distinguish inside differences of variable cost of this fixed cost. For instance, in a factory, or kanang nakay business nga kuan nga pangraka 20k nya ang imong sales kay gamay ra manara ka nga ay gamay ra kayong customer, so manira lang po mga 5 hours ra akong operation, so ang imong sales anang adlaw is dili kana ganing kuwangan ra or mas dako pang imong fixed cost kaysa ang imong makuha nga mga halin or revenue. So mura gani malos na noon ka tungod kay ang fixed cost dagdagan pa sa mga tax nya ang imong halin sa monthly kay 100 day to mura gamay ra ang kuan ba gamay ra gani ang tubo gani, so mura gani wala na noon ka mura kag wa kay jam mo ngangara ka, so mga inana gani, sir.
Okay, that was a wonderful idea, Mr. Gallardo. No, although medyo nisimang ka towards the end, but I like the thought that your example wherein you said ang store na renting a space just because there are a few customers within that day, nag-close na siya because mingaw. But on that day, if you're going to divide the rent by number of days, fixed ang iyang rent, di ba? And probably the salary of the staff, no? Nag-close man siya, nag-open, he would still pay the staff, no? And it was a wrong move because there are going to be fewer sales that will share the cost. What I'm saying is, nagdagan imuhang cost, maura gihapon siya. Sorry, wala nagdagan kay maura gihapon. So, maura gihapon imuhang cost, pero imuhang sales ning gamay, no? So, there will be fewer sales that will cover your fixed cost, no? So, what I'm saying is, kung na kay fixed cost during that day, I'll say 1,000, right? So whether you close or not, you will incur 1,000 cost, right? And if you had you open for the rest of the day, naka-sale ka o say 200, naka-net income ka for that day of 200. So you will say na at least 800 na lang imuhang bawion, right? Right? Because whether you open or not, you would still incur 1,000, right? And because you chose to keep the store open, nakalimpyo ka og 200 nga income, the 200 can help you pay off the 1,000, so you only needed 800, right? Right? But if you decide to
Yes.
say you close instead of keep the store opening, you would still pay 1,000, right? So you have nothing to cover for your 1,000, right? Do you get what I mean?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So that's why it's important you manage the fixed cost, because it helps you understand your decision, no? So you did not realize na nag-close ka without actually taking into consideration your fixed cost because you are not an accountant, di ba? If you are simply a business owner. But kung accountant ka, ikaw business owner, you will be able to consider this, right? But if you have someone, an accountant who can offer you advice, accountant will say no, don't close, because if you close, we would lose everything, no? The 1,000, we would lose the entire 1,000, right? But if we choose to open, even if we only earn 1,000 during the day, that's still good, right? That is still good because that's an extra amount that will cover for our fixed cost, right? Better than nothing. You get what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Acceptance, right?
Yes, sir.
And so we'll come to what um, uh, hold on. Ms. Upsima said earlier, some motivation of employees. Although that's already like a consequence, no? Because if you're not able to manage your overall cost, your profitability, then that will really impact the motivation of employees. But I wanna put that into context as well. So if you're not able to manage your fixed cost, um, you will be very unprofitable, no? That's why you conduct break-even analysis so that you will know at which level will you operate at the minimum so that you can cover your fixed cost. Because the moment you cannot cover your fixed cost, you will incur loss. No? So meaning if you have a break-even point of say 1,000 units, no? So if you sell 1,000 units, you will be good. No, anything above 1,000 that would already be profit, right? Because the 1,000 units meaning covered na imong fixed cost, no? Imong rent, imong salaries, imong depreciation at an actual expense, no? Possible yung imong fixed taxes, right? But the moment you sell below that, magtapal ang business, no? Magtapal ang business because there's not enough to cover for the entire fixed cost. And the moment nga mag-increase ka of sales, every single sale above 1,000, that's already profit, no? So, na kay 1,001, you can already know how much will be your imuhang gross margin on that, no? Imuhang gross margin because or imong gross profit, because you cannot say it's net because you still have other costs, not other than fixed costs, you also have variable costs, diba? I mean, we know that. So that's why it is important that you know and you manage your fixed costs. Many businesses do not understand the difference between fixed costs and variable cost. That's why they're not guided with their decision making. No, it's so it's it's not difficult to bifurcate fixed cost and management. Sorry, fixed cost and variable cost, but it takes an accountant to be able to do so. No, so for small businesses nga, ang ilang focus is mainly for reporting, mainly for financial statements. Wala sila ni focus sa management accounting. They fail to get this information, no? Mo na nga kung I know most Filipinos, no? Most of Filipinos ang kung masipiit na moadto gid tag financial accounting, no? Kay mama na atong goal, mahimot ang auditor, mahimot ang signatory sa mga papers, but very few people actually realize the importance of management accounting, no? In some parts of the world, management accountants are paid more than CPAs, right? So what do CPAs do? They sign financial statements, they make financial audits, right? But what management do? They produce reports for the management, No, they examine profitability, they examine efficiency, they propose changes on how to make things more efficient. No, and as a matter of fact, ang atong exams here are for CPA. Wala exam for management accountants, right? Did you notice that? Not time management accountants, but it's provided by the US, right? So na I certified management accountants, which is an exam provided by a US organization. In the UK, there's CIMA and I think CIMA only, so Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, right? Because these people understand that management accountants are very, very, very important, no? And even in the academe, no, sometimes management accountants are labeled as second class citizens, no? So among school before, if mahagbong make a BSA, there's no way to go but either you shift school so that you can pursue an accounting course, or you shift to a slightly lower course, which is management accounting. So that's why there was in the school there was a misconception that management accountants are second class citizens to BSA graduates, but that's not true in the real world, guys. Management accountants as important as financial accountants. Remember that. So for those 3 people in the class that are taking MA, guys, don't be intimidated by BSA students, or don't think that there's I would say lesser opportunity for you because simply because you're not BSA graduates. I think the only thing that BSA has an advantage on you guys is they can take the CPA board exam in the Philippines, right? At least in the Philippines. But internationally, CPAs and MAs don't really matter, right? So here only in the Philippines wherein dili ta ka take og CPA kung dili ta BSA graduate, because there is a law, right? RA 9298, wherein it is clearly stated there that only graduate of Bachelor of Science in Accountancy can take the CPA board examination, right? That's a law. So nobody has amended that law, and nobody has ever initiated in the Philippines to institute another board exam for MAs. But we understand that because MAs do not sign financial statements, right? Only CPA does, and CPA they sign financial statements by way of lending more integrity into the financial statements of a company. No, dako man gud siya audience. When I say audience, when you look at the financial statements, who are the users of these statements? The government, the BIR, and the SEC, for example, investors, creditors, right? So they need to have a trust on the financial statements to ensure that the company is reporting the right numbers, no? And how can they trust the financial statements when they see someone else vouching for the financial statements, no? So when an independent auditor is able to say na, okay, based on our investigation, our audit, the financial statements sa niya company presents fairly, no? So ang kinsa tong mo rely na nga financial statements makasalig sad, no? Okay, verified ni siya, audited ni siya, then we can trust the assertion of the organization. But management accountants don't do that, no? We don't sign because our audience is the management. It doesn't go out most of the time. Atong information is confidential, no? It doesn't go out of the management. So kung naka profitability analysis, it doesn't go out to your competition, no? Because that's used for internal decision making. Na gets ra so far ang thoughts sa akong statements, or do you have any clarification? And tubag ng manok. Did you have any clarification on that statement? Okay ra? So
Okay ra, sir.
I just
Okay ra, sir.
Okay, good. So I just emphasize ba na you would not know how to manage your fixed costs if you don't have a management accountant.
Okay ra, sir.
Okay, because that's not the focus of a financial accountant. That's the focus of a management accountant. Okay? So So you already know how to come up with a break-even analysis, no? Nanatay formula. Na-cover ba ninyo ang formula sa break-even analysis? Anyone who can say yes, no, maybe? Were you able to cover the formula for break-even analysis? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Ms. Absima, what is the formula for break-even?
Formula for the break even, sir.
Mhm. Okay.
The formula formula for the break even analysis, sir, in which total cost equals the to get the total cost is that we will add the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost.
Sige lang, ma'am. We'll proceed with Miss Santillan. Did you have the formula right there with you?
The formula for break-even point, sir, is that total fixed cost divided by price per cost minus variable cost.
Okay, very good. So total cost divided by the sales price minus the...
The variable cost, sir.
Okay, so when you do this, what do you get? The break-even point in units or in dollars or in pesos?
In units, sir.
Okay, in units. But what about if you are looking at break-even points in pesos or in amounts? Anyone who wants to help her? Wanna help Miss Santillan? Di ba duha man na break-even point in units and break-even points in amounts. Dili na kung may peso but in amounts. So when you say units, how many units are to be sold to come up with a break-even point, right? But sometimes the question could be how much does the company needs to sell to be able to cover fixed costs, right? How many units or how much? Could be both. Okay, Ms. Konahap says fixed cost divided by contribution margin. Very good. So what is contribution margin? How do you come up with contribution margin? Ms. Konahap. Anyone else? So what's the formula for contribution margin? You
Sir,
have the fixed cost, but how do you come
the
up with your
contrib
contribution margin? Yes, Ms. Konahap.
selling price per unit minus the variable cost per unit,
Sure,
sir.
sure. That's actually your
The
contribution
contribution
margin.
margin. Yes, sir, the contribution margin.
Okay, sorry, I made a mistake when I said you were right. Fixed cost divided by contribution margin. When you say contribution margin, that simply is your selling price minus your variable cost. That's the contribution margin. So that's the same thing as what Ms. Antillian said earlier. But what I want to see is the break-even point in amounts. Anyone? So Ms. Tagsip revenue minus fixed cost plus variable cost equals 0. No. Anyone? Anyone? Revenue minus fixed cost minus variable. So fixed minus variable, that's your net income, diba? So you have your revenue minus your fixed cost minus your variable cost. That's your net income, not your break-even point. So Ms. Dituya, total profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. Total profit naman na yung mong gihatag na ko. Dili man na ang break-even points in pesos. Profit is equal to revenue minus fixed cost minus variable cost. Pareha ra gihapon as kang Ms. Konahap. So I'm looking for the break-even points in pesos. will get it. Okay, I will give extra points for those who will get the correct answer. That will be our last topic before we end the session. Mo gihapon na Mr. Ibesa. Okay, Miss Villasaran, you're correct. Total fixed cost divided by contribution margin ratio. Follow-up question, how do you come up with a contribution margin ratio? Do you want to expand on that, Miss Villasaran, or you need help from your classmates? Or mga tug lang sa ta? Okay, Miss Detuya, how do you come up with the contribution margin? The difference between a company's sales and variable cost expressed as a percentage. How do you, okay, Santillian contribution margin divided by revenue sales. Okay. Thank you Google ba ito or no? Thank you Google, no? Yes. Okay, so before we end, let me show you an illustration of this, no? So that you have an understanding how it actually works. Okay, so why were you laughing, Mr. Tuya? Because you were guilty of using Google. Okay, Rana, guys, I do the same thing. So I will just share you my screen. Let me know when you see it. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
very good. So we have 15 minutes before the time ends. I will share this with you. So example, you have your fixed cost of 1,000 pesos. Okay, your selling price per unit is 10, right? Your cost per unit is 5. Sorry, let's say variable cost per unit. This is per unit. This one is also per unit. Okay, and what did you say earlier? Formula for break-even points in units will be your fixed cost divided by your contribution margin. So how do you come up with the contribution margin? Your selling price minus your variable cost, right? So in this example, your fixed cost is 1,000, right? So look at the formula here. So you have 1,000 divided by...
Excuse me, sir. Wallpaper ang makita, sir.
I'm sorry?
Excuse me, sir.
Okay, among wallpaper ang ma-view. Okay, just sorry
Paper
about
lang
that.
nimo among makitaan.
Sorry about that. Let me do
Okay,
it
sir.
again.
Nag-
Okay. Okay.
Naana, sir.
Okay. So do you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is a simple illustration of break-even point. So in our example, you have your fixed cost of 1,000 pesos, your selling price at 10, your variable cost at 5, right? Now, you were saying earlier that the formula is fixed cost divided by the contribution margin. So contribution margin is simply your selling price minus your variable cost, correct? So in this example, 5 will be our contribution margin, correct? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we do that, that simply is, actually, I already have the formula here. So that's simply 1,000 divided by selling price minus variable cost. So meaning to say our BEP or break-even points in unit is 200 units, right? But what I asked earlier is how much is your break-even in pesos, right? So how much you should be selling to cover your fixed cost, right? The answer is 2,000. 2,000 pesos. This one is 200 units. So how do you come up with that? By looking for the contribution margin ratio. So what is the contribution margin ratio? This, your selling price minus your variable cost divided by, sorry, so divided by your selling price, right? So that means you have 50% contribution margin ratio, right? Gets? So if it's 50%, simply that's 1,000 divided by 50%. So how much do you come up with? 2,000, right? So in units, you need to sell 2,000 to cover your fixed costs. For in pesos, you need to sell 2,000 pesos to be able to cover your fixed cost of 1,000. Let us prove that. So here, your sales in units is 2,000, correct? So 2,000, that is basically your 200 units times 10, right? So baligya kag 200 units, ingon man ka maka break even na daw ka na. So let's prove it. So 200 times your selling price of 10 is total sales of 2,000, correct? Then your variable cost is also 200 times your variable cost. So if you sell 200, that's 200 will also cost you 1,000. Diba? Imang ka variable cost nimo is 5. Therefore, 2,000 sales minus variable cost, your gross margin is then 1,000, right? Is this the same thing as your fixed cost? Is it the same thing or not? Hello?
The same, sir.
The same, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so your gross margin, I think I'm wrong here. Is it 2,000? There should be 20, there should be 20,000, I think, or 2,000. So in past, I'm trying to provide the solution for the um, in pesos, but my gross margin here is wrong. It should be 1,000 only. So if you are selling 2,000, sorry, no, I'm wrong. So this is 2,000 here. It should be 2,000 because in pesos, right? And if you are 2,000, if you're selling 2,000 divided by selling price of 10, so that means you sold 200, right? Okay. And then multiply that with your variable cost of 5, so 1,000. Therefore, your fixed cost or your gross margin is also 1,000. Did you get this? So, kani per unit, right? Kani is on absolute amount. So you need to sell 2,000 to be able to cover your 1,000 of fixed cost. This is in units. This is in pesos. Nag-gets niyo guys?
Hindi naman nabalik tong 1,000 the picture.
So 1,000 is your fixed cost, right?
Sa may pesos the picture.
Yeah. So when you say pesos here, you were saying earlier that you need to sell total amount of 2,000 to be able to cover your fixed cost of 1,000, right? So we're just trying to prove that, no? How do we prove? So you say sales ka 2,000. But kasi in units, you come up with 2,000 by simply multiplying your total number of units sold at 200, right, times your selling price, right? Here, you don't have to multiply because that's your assumption here. This is already in pesos, right? And then to come up with your variable cost, so you work that back. So how do you work that back? If you sold 2,000 and you know that the selling price is 10, that means you sold 200, right? 200 times the variable cost of 5 is 1,000. Now 2,000 minus 1,000 is your gross margin, which is also equivalent to your fixed cost. So if you have your fixed cost of 1,000, how much is your net income? So gross margin minus your fixed cost, that's 0, right? Right? And when I said earlier na if you increase your break-even points by a single amount only, what will happen to your net income? So say you have sold, your target is minimum 200, right? So you need to add, say, one more unit. Sorry, here. So you sold extra 1 unit. Look at what happened, right? So for extra 1 unit, you actually have a net income of 5, right? Which is equivalent to your selling price minus your variable cost, right? And then notice what happens if you add 2 here. Now it becomes 10, right? Add 3. You have multiples of 5. Why do you increase your net income by 5 pesos every time you sold 1 unit? Diba? Because imong selling price 10 man, and every time you sell 10, you reduce that with a variable cost of 5. Diba? Kaya mamuhunan biya ka na. When you produce, you also you also incur production cost, diba? That's your variable cost. Di man pwedeng nga mamaligya ka nya wa kay puhunan ana, diba? So you're saying that every unit umuhunan kag 5. So kung mamaligya ka og 1 unit above the break-even point of 200, so simply ang imong profit is identified as 1 unit multiplied by the gross margin per unit, which is your selling price minus your variable cost, right? That's why it's in multiples of 5. Now, if you have this analysis, every time you have a number above your break-even point, kaya ba na din kapila imuhang, sorry, delete na siya net income, no? Or yeah, we can consider this a net income because this is your variable cost here. This is your fixed cost here. Nagets ra? Or a little too fast? Tell me honestly, we have 4 minutes. Hello?
Gets
Okay.
sir.
Okay. I will not be able to entertain questions if you have one because we are running out of time. It's been a great session with you guys. I hope that you got the gist of what I was telling you earlier. If you are taking BSA, be grateful and just push through that. You will be able to take the CPA board exam and then become a management accountant at the same time. However, if you are taking management accounting, don't be in despair because there's a lot of opportunity for you and that management accountants are as important as CPAs. Okay, so keep learning, and this material, I may not be able to provide you 100% support for all the materials, but what I do is meet you every now and then if I feel that I need to add something. And if you do want to meet next time, do let me know, and then I will schedule that accordingly. Okay? So
Okay, sir.
that would be all for now. And just for all your information, I have recorded this meeting, and I will be posting the recording into our class as well. Okay? So if there's no question, or if even if you have, I will not entertain because we don't have time. So I think that's about it. And again, thank you very much for your time. I'll see you again next time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.